Come with us now, if you dare, down a rickety staircase into a dank, dark basement. What awaits? The Saturday Night Freak Show.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Saturday Night Freak Show podcast. We're a weekly movie review podcast where we watch a movie, then we tear it apart for your listening pleasure and edification. We want to remind you that you can reach out and let us know how we're doing or talk about any of the movies that we've done or that we're going to do. You can find us on Facebook.
Facebook.com/Saturday Night Freak Show.
On Twitter.
@SatFreakShow.
By email.
Saturday Night Freak Show, yahoo.com.
Or on Instagram at Saturday Night Freak Show. This entire month of January, we're doing something that we've never done before. That's not true.
You're liar. We did it last year, Colin.
I mean, I guess in a way
2 years
we
ago,
have.
Sean.
2 years ago? Did we not?
No, it was 2 years ago. Dead Heat, Rawhead Rex, and yeah, that was like 2016.
Did we not do it last year?
We didn't. I went and looked.
Really?
back
We
'cause
skipped
it
a year?
Feels like it was last year. It was 2 years ago.
Really?
Wait, what year is it? Maybe that's my problem. Maybe I just don't know what year it is.
What's going on? Really?
Yeah.
Did we actually skip
Or maybe
a year?
it was 2017.
So did we just go through?
2018.
Did we just go through January and just be
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
really? I thought we
Yeah.
did this every year.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
No,
wow.
yeah, we did, because I want to say, like, last January I did Buried. Was like my January
think
pick,
so.
I think.
Ooh,
yeah, so that
okay.
would have been.
Wow, we just
we
so
would have
maybe
been
we
do it
doing
every
it then.
2
That's
years.
weird. No,
Maybe
we
that's
should
how it
probably do
works.
it
We
every
should do it
year.
every year. It's
I
fun.
don't know why we skipped a year. We should probably do it every year.
Have we explained what we're doing every year?
No, go for it, Colin.
We're watching movies that are chosen by you.
Dear Brailer, dear listener, dear you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We took a bunch of suggestions. Then we had you vote on them, and we're watching the top 4 vote-gettingest movies. We watched Detention. We watched Super Mario Brothers. Thank you very much for that one. And
Thanks.
this week, we watched...
Magic.
When you don't preface it with a
Magic.
movie chosen by you,
Yeah.
then I'm lost.
I know.
We watched
We're throwing
Magic,
off the whole shebang here.
starring
Anthony Hopkins
and
and Margaret.
directed by
Richard Attenborough.
who is also
Well, you'd probably know him as John Hammond from the
Probably.
Jurassic Park movie.
right or Big X from Great Escape. One of my favorite.
Oh, that's
movies.
right.
One
Yeah,
of my
he was.
favorite movies.
Because he's an actor and a director.
He is.
And he has done movies like Chariots of Fire, I think was his.
I think so.
Wait, was it? Maybe not. He did...
Not Chariots of Fire, but he did. Hold on, I'm going to look him
Out
up
of
because he's
Africa. He did Chaplin for sure. I got
Chaplin. Yes, he did Chaplin.
A Bridge Too Far.
Bridge Too Far. Richard
There's something else like big in there.
Attenborough.
Yeah. And also an actor.
And also an actor. Wait, hold on. We can.
Did he go blind in The Great Escape? No, that was Donald Pleasence.
No, that was Donald Pleasance.
Right.
No, he was like the head of it all, and he got taken out to a field
That's
and
right.
shot by
That's
the
right.
fucking Nazis.
Spoiler for The Great Escape.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that movie,
Spoiler for a movie that's like, what, 40 or
it's
50
like
years
40
old?
years old.
Yeah.
3 hours
Well,
long.
that's
It's a great movie. If you have not seen that
People
movie,
probably haven't seen it.
Bridge Too Far, Magic. He did Gandhi. He
Gandhi,
directed
that's the one.
Gandhi.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the one. Gandhi.
Academy Award winner for Gandhi.
A chorus line. Chaplin, Shellens, and Love and More.
So he only does Oscar bait, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
He was a
yeah,
big
he did
deal.
a couple Oscar baits.
Oh,
and then
you know what?
2007 was the last thing he directed.
Did he narrate those BBC
I think,
Earth?
is that not David Attenborough?
David
That's David
Attenborough.
Attenborough.
That's
right,
David
okay,
Attenborough. Yeah, that's the other Attenborough.
We got like Morgan Freeman on our version, but I
And
think
Oprah.
and Oprah,
Right.
right. But if you saw it in England, it was Richard. Or sorry, David Attenborough.
David Attenborough.
So
Richard Attenborough has passed away. May he rest in peace. 2014.
that's right. His last movie was
Goodbye, John
probably
Hammond.
Lost World. I think he was in Lost World.
As an actor,
Yeah. Remember, he's in the bed. He's all like,
Jack and the
Decrepit.
Beanstalk. I mean,
Never
he
actually
did
seen Lost
Technicolor
World.
Raincoat. Oh, he was in Elizabeth. No, he did things after Jurassic Park.
okay.
A couple things.
He's
Lost World.
posthumously in the Jurassic World. Okay, so
right.
this movie was suggested to us by MF Mad.
Oh,
Suggested
okay.
Magic. So
well, thank you.
we got
Thanks for your
one more to
suggestion.
go.
How many people voted for this movie?
A lot.
I don't have that
It's
number.
surprising because it would have to be a lot. Because I remember you said for like it was at least like in the teens for Super Mario Brothers, so it had to have
Yeah,
been
it's in
like
the
a
teens.
significant amount more for Magic, which a movie that I had never ever heard of.
See, this
before
surprises
tonight.
me.
Yeah, I've heard a ton about it.
Haven't seen anything about it. Haven't seen pictures from it.
You didn't know this movie
didn't know this
existed. Wow.
Until tonight.
Wow.
Didn't know that Anthony Hopkins did a dummy movie. Maybe because I hate dummies.
Why?
Don't like them.
They creep you out?
No, I have no problem with the creepy factor. I don't find them interesting. Well, what's the recent one? Like Dead Silence?
Yeah.
When that came out? That was James Wan, wasn't it?
I worked at the movie theater when that came out.
Don't like that movie. Had no interest in seeing it. I just don't like movies with dummies in it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
but here's the thing. I've been thinking about this. Have you ever seen a dummy in any sort of movie, TV show, whatever, where the relationship between the dummy and that handler is normal and not
it's
weird.
never not creepy.
Exactly. It's only ever played as something creepy. It's never played in
and that's the only reason you introduce a dummy in a movie, I think.
Well, I was thinking about it because Arrested Development has a dummy bit, and that is like a mouthpiece for a character to get out his racist thoughts.
Sure,
so
but again, that's
there's always,
but it's not a normal relationship.
That's what I'm saying. There's that's like the closest I could come to like a normal relation. Like it's always shorthand for this person's a creepy loner.
Yeah.
Right. Like anytime a dummy shows up.
Because I'm thinking, even going back to there was a movie in the '60s called I think it was Dead of Night. Was it? It was like a 4-part movie, and one of them's the ventriloquist. I think he has a dummy. I mean, that's like in the '60s. We're going back as far as. I mean, obviously there was. I was mentioning it during the movie, but there was a famous guy. It was Edgar Bergen. It's Candace Bergen's father.
Oh.
He had a dummy called Charlie McCarthy, and so that was. They were like a big act on like night talk shows and stuff like that.
Right.
Like
Rich Little,
Tonight Show,
as was mentioned in this movie.
Yeah, because he could throw his voice, right? Or
Rich Little did impersonations of people.
I
yes.
guess we do have Jeff Dunham, don't
That's
we?
what I was going to say. We have to dedicate a segment of this to Jeff Dunham.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to talk about Jeff Dunham.
God damn it! I totally I was living in a world where I forgot he existed, and now I've been
not
brought
gonna lie.
back.
When he first came out and was like maybe the first 1 or 2 specials, I'm like, all right, that's pretty funny. But I think
prop
it wears
humor,
what?
You like prop humor, huh?
Well, I mean, it was when it was different. When it came out, it's just like nobody's doing ventriloquism anymore, and no one's doing it with
incredibly racist.
I guess looking back on it, it's a little bit more racist and a little more extreme than probably what you were used to. So yeah, maybe it was a little funny. Now it's just like
the dummy that pees himself, or that's
no,
okay,
no,
that's
but it's just bad. Mm-hmm. It's bad.
Well, and there was that was different. I was gonna say like Crank Yankers was like a really popular show.
It was, that was puppets. That was more
different.
puppets. Yeah, I remember. I peed in your pool. Yeah,
that's what made me think of it. I was like, I was talking about peed and stuff. I was like, I'm pretty sure that was Crank Yankers.
I've seen that somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I'm like all my experience, I think, with ventriloquism in movies is always like horror movies. Yeah. Did you ever see? There was a Tales from the Crypt episode with Bobcat Goldthwait.
I think I've seen this one.
I think that was called the ventriloquist dummy.
I think I've seen that. Yeah,
it's been a long time.
It had a pretty good twist that I'm not going to spoil, but you should check that.
Colin, I can't believe we're watching a movie about a ventriloquist with his dummy, and you have not busted out your doll. Colin has a doll.
I don't want to see it. You
Where
can
is
keep
the
it.
doll? How is this not the first thing?
I don't think I can't remember if I sold him or not. He may be in the back.
I think he's in the back. I doubt you sold him since we last saw him.
You're telling me like I've been down here for how many hundreds of episodes now, and there's
on
a
that
doll
side of the wall.
Oh
there's
my
a
God.
doll.
I could have gone the rest of my life without knowing
it's as
that.
creepy as you think, and Colin owns a doll.
I can't remember what his name is. Though.
I don't.
It wasn't
know
Charlie
either.
McCarthy, because Charlie McCarthy had a monocle and a top hat.
This is not your
okay.
doll.
All right, then that's not yours.
This is your basic. It feels like your basic run of the mill doll.
He was based on like a nightclub act or something. But I can't remember what his name was.
How did you did you find this in an attic of the house you moved into? How did you come into owning this?
I probably picked it up at a garage sale. My mom was a big
purchase.
She was a big garage sale sailor. And probably got it when I was a kid, so I've had it forever.
So he still
and tried to, because I remember at school I would do like the ventriloquist dealio. Mine wasn't.
Oh,
cool.
How'd that work for you?
You were real popular, weren't you?
I was really good at it. I think I had a book at one point, like on how to move your mouth so you
if
could
you
actually.
had the doll, I guarantee you had a book.
Yeah. but mine didn't have the inner gears or anything. It was a stuffed body, and it just had the like pull string for the mouth.
Just for the mouth, yeah.
So that's
Because
all you can do.
because you can, they make ones where you can. In this
This one's
movie,
eyebrows
this one's
move.
accentuated upper lip, bottom lip, eyes,
Yeah,
eyebrows,
this is a
ears.
professional
This is a
gizmo, yeah.
very intricate doll. This is all funny because my kid has currently gotten into. He's inquisitive about ventriloquism, and he would like a doll where
Oh,
he
no.
can make. Yeah, no, I know. I'm also creeped out. Just as interested
Get
right
him
now.
like a Jim Henson type puppet instead
We got
to
him
like
a- we
scratch
got
that
him
itch.
I was gonna say Cracker Jack, a Nutcracker.
Okay.
The mouth
Yeah.
moves for
There you
Christmas.
go.
We're like, you could paint this and use this.
I got a movie you need
so
to see.
we use this to see if he wants to keep going or we'll just grow out of it. So we're not dedicating ourselves to it.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Well, we didn't even mention that this movie is written by William Goldman.
William Goldman, based
Yeah.
off his novel.
That's insane.
Well, he
He's
was
great.
a novelist before he was a
Yes.
filmmaker.
Very
but
much.
You may know him from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Right? He's an Academy Award-winning.
Did he win for
screenwriter.
that or All the President's Men?
I
One of
think
those got
he
him
definitely
at,
got nominated for All the President's Men. I
Yeah.
think he won for Butch Cassidy.
Did you ever see Marathon Man with Dustin
Yes,
Hoffman?
yes, I have recently.
Safe.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
that movie
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
creeps me
The
out.
magic, and everybody listening at least knows The Princess Bride. That was
of course.
yeah, William Goldman, and he was a script doctor. I mean, he worked on a ton of stuff.
Right, and he's worked on things you don't even know he's worked on.
Yeah.
Like he's just
Maverick.
He wrote a movie that I really like that a lot of people don't, The Ghost in the Darkness.
Yeah.
I actually really like that movie.
I really
Yeah.
like The Ghost in the Darkness.
Me too.
I used to watch it a lot because it was one of those HBO all the time.
On TV all the time.
Yeah,
for some reason.
it's like him and Michael Douglas,
Yeah.
Val Kilmer and Michael
Val
Douglas. I'm
Kilmer.
like, I really like that movie. Even now,
Killer
if you
Wines.
lock eyes, you will be afraid. Love that movie.
I had to bring that to the freak show
Love it.
sometime.
And
Good
didn't he
stuff.
do? I think he do Misery. He did the
I think he
screenplay
did
to Misery
as well. Yeah.
Yes. You're correct.
All right, so
does-
we've got some class act people, and Jerry Goldsmith did the music for Magic.
Right? So this is like a legitimate movie.
Yeah,
Bravo to you, dear listener and voters, that you
I know. Is it
got
too upscale for the Saturday Night Freak
It
Show?
kind of feels like it is. It's just like, wow, you're voting on good movies? Like, you started out with Detention and Mario Brothers, and then you got to this movie? Wow, you guys are
But you know,
schizophrenic.
I'm glad it
at the
happened because
least.
now I can finish this. I can finish this month now. You know, now I don't have to rage quit listener requests.
Right,
month.
you can finish off
Yeah.
dry January and just
Yeah,
like, all right,
exactly.
this movie doesn't make
Yes.
me want to drink,
Yeah,
if nothing else.
yeah.
The movie also stars Burgess Meredith.
Oh, thank God it does.
Yeah, and
I
like,
love watching Burgess Meredith say words. That's all I can say about that man. Like any just combination of sentences, I'm just like, I love it.
he's
I love
really
his
good.
delivery.
He's watchable.
He's good.
But he's like,
good.
I mean, his in Rocky. I mean, he's gruff. I guess that's always
Sure.
what you like about Burgess Meredith is
Right.
his roughness. But he comes off as more. I've seen him mostly in the old Twilight Zone episode and
Yeah.
stuff like that, or Grumpy Old Men, where
Which
he's
he-
acerbic. But
And
in
Margaret's
this,
in that too.
That's
which
right,
I
yeah,
had to,
yeah.
I had to like, I was doing my backwards thing because I'm like, I knew Anne Margaret before I knew she was Anne Margaret because
From
I was
what?
watching Grumpy Old Men and
Oh,
Grumpy Old
okay.
Men. Like,
Yeah.
I some people I come to later on, I'm just like, okay, I know who they are. And then I figure out, oh, that's Anne Margaret.
Yeah.
I'm just like, who is she? She's
I'm
like,
trying to
oh,
think, was
because of
she
this.
in
So
like
they're making
Rio
this.
Bravo or something? No, that's Angie Dickinson.
I think so, yes.
Anne Margaret was
Bye Bye Birdie.
and the Elvis.
We can always look it
movie,
up.
She was Viva Las Vegas.
And Margaret.
Because I looked up a little bit of her bio, but Anne Margaret, when back in the 60s, I guess, or 50s, was thought to be
She's
like,
Happy currently. Holy shit.
yeah, she's still working. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
But she was thought to be the female Elvis Presley, and I guess they
Oh,
had
shit,
her
really?
record some of his
could
songs,
sing.
but she did it in his type of way.
Viva
you know.
Las Vegas, yep.
And so
That's
they
Rusty
put them
Martin.
together in Viva Las Vegas. Apparently, she had an
Wow.
affair with Elvis.
Who did?
Who
Back in
wouldn't?
that time.
Who didn't?
and who wouldn't? I would have an affair with Elvis
You know,
if I
that's-
lived back then.
All right, but I'll tell you
This is like
something.
the coldest of takes, nowadays. I didn't think it would help
Right. Oh, the hand affair with Elvis.
Yeah,
Oh,
imagine
you're
that.
special.
Yeah.
All right, but okay, so I'll tell you
Half
something.
his movies were based on that fact.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something you don't know. Then she
She
recorded.
had a baby by Elvis. That would be something. Woo.
Didn't see that twist.
It's like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Oh,
She recorded a couple of duets with Elvis that were not released until after his death because Colonel Tom Parker thought that she would upstage Elvis in his own songs.
I mean, at that point in his career, probably.
Well, maybe.
You know, if it was.
Oh, when did fucking Colonel Parker come into the picture? Like that early?
I don't know.
I don't know enough
Yeah,
about Elvis.
me neither.
I gotta
Not
go
an
back
Elvis historian.
no. I've been watching a lot of Elvis movies recently. It was his birthday in January this month. It was
Did they
Elvis.
rebroadcast like Elvis? What's a Hawaiian one?
There's
Aloha?
There's Paradise Hawaiian style, and there's Blue Hawaii. I
No,
have
but not
watched
the
a
movie.
lot of
You know
these.
that it was like a satellite
he had, like, a live-
broadcast that
yeah.
went everywhere.
right. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's the one where he had the big white rhinestone
Yeah.
suit.
Okay.
It was like Aloha Hawaii or something like that.
Yeah, I remember this.
I'm sorry, Elvis.
Is this slightly fat
fans.
Elvis?
Yeah.
All right,
This is
yeah,
toward
this-
the end.
yeah,
I think
this
it's a
This is,
comeback
yeah,
Elvis.
Vegas
This is
style
puffy Elvis. Yeah, okay, I remember this.
Elvis stops for me long before that. My Elvis window's very small.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mine is expanding because I have to watch it for work. So
Did you know that Anne Margaret had a disco hit like 2 years
Oh.
after Magic?
No.
Oh, yeah, you should look it up.
It's
I'm not gonna tell you about
Love
it. You should
Rocket
look
or
it up.
something like that.
How does it compare
Love-
to Disco Duck?
Ooh, Love Rocket.
Disco Duck's a
I would
better
rather
song.
watch
Disco
Love
Duck's
Rocket.
better, huh? Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was a hit apparently, whatever the hell it was.
Oh,
Love,
sure.
With
love
disco, anything was a
something,
hit, so.
Love Bomb.
Yeah, for that
Love-
5-month period, disco was pretty big.
Yeah. All right. So
Love Bomb, Love Rocket,
it's
Love Bomb.
something like that. I don't know. I have to look it up. So this movie stars Anthony Hopkins. He is a character named Corky.
He is quirky.
Yeah, because he's not weird enough. You know, just gotta
Yeah,
make
right.
him weird every
There
way we
hasn't been a
can.
more famous Corky since Corky Romano, and
And look what happened.
and
to
look
him.
what happened with that. Thank you, Chris Kattan.
Yeah.
It's Chris Kattan and Anthony
Corky,
Hopkins.
it
Those are our
sounds.
Corky.
You know what it does though? The name. I don't know if it did in the '70s, but it makes him sound like juvenile.
right? Quirky.
Mm-hmm.
Corky is like a kid. You know.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's definitely a kid's name. What is the full version of Corky?
Cork Amberson. I have no idea.
Just trying to.
Cork
Cork
Amberson.
Amberson be a parish. Yeah. I don't know.
That's. I'll go with that.
Yeah,
Cork
good.
Amberson.
Is it short for something?
It
I
feels
assume.
like it's got to be Corky. Feels like a nickname at some point.
Yeah.
Like, but it's not even like.
Corinthian?
I was
It's not
thinking
even
like
like
Cornelius.
James
short for
Cornelius?
Cornelius, yeah.
Corky,
Could be,
yeah.
like, because Courtney, but Corky. I'm trying to figure because you can't just name a kid Corky.
Yeah.
That's,
Maybe you can. I don't know.
horrible.
It's there's someone on clitorius. Somebody is wanted right now. She's a fugitive from Virginia. That's her name. No
Wow.
joke.
Yeah, that's her legit name. I saw that news article. Yeah.
Places. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for strange names. So, Corky is a lounge magician.
A shitty one to start with.
Yeah.
As it were.
I forgot. I've seen this movie before. I forgot that whole bit. I thought it
That was
started
like
out
almost
with,
painful to watch. I was like, God, okay, we get the point. We get it. He sucks. It goes on for a while. You see his whole act, basically.
Yeah. Oh no, I like that they start with him just being flop sweating and yelling at the audience, just out of anger for not stopping and paying attention to what he's doing.
And the movie does an interesting thing where he's recounting this to his mentor, this other magician, but he's
Merlin.
telling him the lie version of like, yeah, it was great, and they loved it when I did this. But we're seeing like almost a silent
version of the reality of it.
Yeah, that's one of those writerly things.
It is.
It's like,
It's a good time saving technique. You know?
yeah. And a year later, all of a sudden, Corky is on top. He's in demand by
He figured it out. Yes.
Yeah. He's somehow now this like magician everybody wants to see. Why or how or what was his gimmick? How did
he introduced a new thing to his act because he needed some what did he say? Some charm, some
stage presence.
Some presence. What did Merlin call it?
You got to find your charm.
You got to find your charm. You got to find your charm. And his charm comes in the form of a dummy
named Fats.
Who I hate, named Fats.
That looks just like Anthony Hopkins. Just like an exaggerated.
Made to look just like Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
It's even got the slight eyes because it doesn't fully open, which is just like Anthony Hopkins.
And the thing that's weird about it, I mean, I don't remember dummies being
huge.
Yeah, huge. I mean,
huge.
its head
Gigantic.
is bigger than Anthony Hopkins' face.
Very much so.
Yeah. Fats.
I think that's a good way to go to make it more like, obviously, terrifying and just like odd and just like off-putting to have a giant-headed dummy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked. I don't like it.
And David Ogden Stiers is in this movie.
He is for like I'd say Stiers for like
MASH?
5 minutes.
Yeah, but he's like an NBC executive. See, this is the other thing I thought was cool about this movie was like the showbiz world that it exists in, at least at the beginning, feels like a real of the time showbiz world.
Right.
Which I can only assume is because of Goldman's, experiences in Hollywood.
Sure,
it's
that
like,
he wrote that in there.
yeah, there's this name dropping and kind of like a very specific kind of sense of place. It's like, I assume that you know what you're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about how agents work and all this other stuff.
And then there's the show going on and kind of like maybe a shittier nightclub, and then you're just like, no, come and watch them. And, come in to see the talent and everything. It feels real.
Yeah.
From everything I've read, it feels like the right version of events.
Because I was like, well, what the fuck are they? So what if you find this guy? But the way they lay it out, it's like, so he's going to basically go, his career trajectory is to get on the Johnny Carson show, and then from there get a pilot, and then
and that's like that was the thing, like to get a pilot on a broadcast network, like that was your goal at that point. Work your way up to that point, and like maybe they'll offer you a pilot. What I will say, I like how they explained why magicians don't do well. They do well in person, but not on television by themselves. Is because the whole thing is about what did he say?
Misdirection.
It's misdirection, and you can't do that when the camera of the television camera is focusing right on the magician. You need something to like misdirect them with, and that's
Isn't that where editing comes in, though? Like,
I mean, well, yeah,
but once you edit a magic trick, I think that's when, like, even now when I watch something, there's a camera. Like, I don't trust it if there's editing.
No,
I mean now you can't trust
when
it
you get to that
computer assist.
When you get to editing magic tricks, you get. Now you see me, and now you see me too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking about like the David Copperfield specials that were like cultural events in the 90s.
Right.
Those were big fucking deals. Yeah,
big deal. But back then, I mean, when it was just like if at that point 3 camera stuff, but mostly just the dead on camera. If you're gonna watch a magician back in this time, like it's just focused on the magician, and you have nowhere to like throw the camera's look in order to perform your trick.
Right.
So he figured it out. He needs the dummy in order to pull it off. That's when he becomes a success.
Yeah, because he's still basically doing card tricks.
Yes, it's the same shit.
But he's able to do it, and it's more magnetic for to watch him because you're watching the dummy and you're checking to see is his mouth moving. So you're not watching his hands at all, which is how he's able to accomplish these illusions. The Burgess Meredith character, like one thing that he proposes before superstardom takes over, because it seems like we cut through a couple of different eras, so some time has passed. He said that once you're on Carson, blah blah blah, and then there's a
and when he asks you back,
it's like you've already been on Carson a couple of times, but the movie doesn't give you those like a year later.
No, it doesn't.
Whatever.
But you figure that out. And did he? Were they at the Four Seasons when they were talking about?
I think so.
I think so too. That's what
lunch.
That's what that's what it felt like, because it feels like a passage of time, and they're like meeting for lunch, and like this is the Four Seasons, right? Like we know he's made it, because that's what it says. Like once I asked for lunch at the Four Seasons, you're in the clear.
Yeah.
So it felt like that's where they got to.
I think so. I don't know New York enough to know, but it looked like the Four Seasons.
That's fine. Wouldn't say it if they weren't setting it up for something.
But one of the things that Corky needs to submit to is a medical exam, which I think we're supposed to take is a psychiatric exam as part of it.
Because the physicality would probably be fine. It's the psychiatric part that would not be good.
And he must at this point kind of suspect something, or he knows something, right? And he says he doesn't want to take the exam, and he's like, he's going to give away stardom because of it. Burgess Meredith is like, you're crazy, kid, and he keeps pursuing him. But Corky's like, that's it, I'm out, and I'm going to take off to the Catskills and go lose myself. Well, I guess he's
they all go to the Catskills.
He goes back there because he's from there.
Right. Well, that's where all like acts like that from back in the day, comedians and magicians and whatnot, they came from the Catskills. That's where they toured and everything. And they would, if they were good enough, they made their way to like stardom and, you know, the major spotlight.
Yeah.
So he goes back there and to a woman that he knew 15 years prior. Peg.
Peggy Ann Snow.
Yep.
Played by
And Margaret.
Anne Margaret. And this is, I guess, where the movie kind of settles in for what is actually the plot. Because, I mean, again,
Yes.
I barely remembered, having seen it the last time, that there was some stuff that took place in New York City. The whole movie is basically this lake set, you know,
It's
thriller.
a Jason movie, yes.
It is the ugliest time of year, though. Holy shit, this movie is like gray and brown.
Right, yeah. It's just like
Wall-to-wall
nothing on the
mud.
trees. It's muddy. It's just shit.
It's
Yeah.
ugly as all. And maybe that's the point, and maybe that's, you know, to
Sure.
establish mood or whatever. But like, I was just like, for a little bit there, I was like, was this shot in like the shittiest part of England in like the rainiest season?
It feels like the shittiest part of New England at this
Yeah,
point.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be Catskills, right?
Catskill.
Yeah,
I feel like they shot at New England.
Is that like upstate New
Yeah,
York, right? So,
yeah.
okay, so who we talked about, like, but Fats, the
Right,
dummy,
the dummy.
has a very distinct personality, and I guess this is not spoiling anything. This is where the movie is going. It's the that, you know, much like Psycho, we're going to end up finding ourselves aligned with a mentally unstable person who has a split personality, and in this case, it's his dummy.
Yes.
So what's Fats like?
Kind of vulgar and inappropriate.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the act that they go with, but it feels the act is that way because that's his alternate personality within Fats.
All the things he wants to say but doesn't want to be held accountable for saying,
Right,
he
because
says
it
through the
kinda-
dummy.
Right, because he's kind of a milquetoast maybe character. He's just like he's a
Quirky?
little, yeah, quirky. He's a little shyer. He's just not, you know, as out and about, and so that having the dummy helps with that other side. I mean, again, that's his charm. He found it. He's more charismatic with the dummy. So
Yeah, you
the
can
dummy,
say all this stuff and
Right.
people actually laugh at it.
Right.
Where you couldn't say that kind of stuff. Well, I assume he just wouldn't express it.
he wouldn't do
at
it
all.
himself, right?
Yeah.
So the dummy does that on stage and in private
All the time.
all the time.
All the time.
Won't stop talking. Can't stop talking for 5 minutes, as we're shown.
That's
Okay,
the thing.
okay.
If you met someone for the first time and they were having a conversation with you with this dummy, like you're not going to their act. They're like
Right, I'd be
in
like,
a
hey,
normal setting.
What's that?
It'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like
Yeah,
that's
but
you know.
to me, that's the same as like I've seen interviews with musicians, you know, rock musician guitarists who sit there and they're picking away on their guitar during an interview, or they just they're swinging
playing
it
with
around,
their instrument.
They're playing with. It's like it's always there. You know, just they have to have their hands on it at some point, like it's part of them almost. I kind of took it that way. Like I think if I was to come in here and start talking to you with a dummy, which is probably going to happen before the night's over.
God.
I would hope so.
The-
I'm asking for it, please.
that would be weird.
That's what I'm saying though. But that he walks into rooms where with people
Yeah, but
he's never met
famous.
before.
But he's famous. They all know. At the point when we see that happening and everybody seems to respond to it,
Well, you would-
he is
I
quirky,
wonder if
amazing
Jeff-
You would
quirky.
hope
Do you
there
think
was
Jeff
just like
Dunham does
fans.
that? Do you think Jeff Dunham walks around with
no.
one?
I think he hates it. To tell you the truth, I'll bet he never does it outside of having to be on stage. He'll work on that shit in private, but I'm pretty sure he hates. He would not bring that into any conversation or in any room whatsoever.
What do you think he
I
would?
feel like there's a self-loathing with that guy. There's got to be.
Jeff Dunham, you're saying not
Yes,
quirky.
not
Yeah.
quirky. Jeff Dunham.
What do you think he would do if like he's about to go on stage, and, like his trunk of all of his like ventriloquist dummies is just gone? It's just missing. He doesn't have
Quirky?
any of it. No, I'm Jeff Dunham.
Oh, Jeff Dunham.
Because he has like what 7 or 8 different ones or something like
At
that.
this
What
point,
if his
yeah.
trunks just all go missing? What's he
He
gonna
would
do?
just
Does he
go
have
on.
a routine that is not based on?
Racism
Dummies?
or sexism or
Yeah.
anything like that? I don't know. I think he'd be pretty much at a loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he'd
So
have
that's
to
what I'm
cancel
saying.
the
Like
show.
he might hate it, but that's all he's got.
That's all he's got. I think he hates that is all he has.
He made
I
that
think
choice,
that's why
man.
Sure. I think it went too far. He's like, well, I can't come back.
He's
from
crying
this.
all the way to the bank. That
Yeah.
dude's a fucking bajillionaire,
Yeah.
so I don't feel bad for him.
Jesus.
Didn't he have his own show on Comedy Central at one point? Even
did, yeah, he
yeah.
did.
So he's fine.
Yeah, he'll be fine. He's not funny, but he'll be fine.
Yeah.
So there it is.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming everything you just said would probably apply to Corky as well. He loses
At a
mind if
certain
he,
point, yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I guess the main thing that happens here is he does rekindle the romance with his childhood. Well, they weren't sweethearts. He had a crush on her.
Right.
And now she's grown up. She's got an unhappy marriage, and she is to Duke, who's played by.
Yeah, what's his name? Who is this guy? I've seen
His
him.
name is Ed Lauder.
I've seen Ed Lauder
He looks
in
familiar.
many places.
And,
I feel like I've seen him many times before.
Well, guess what, ladies
sir?
and germs? Ed Lauder, with this movie, has made his way on to
Oh, shit.
the Saturday Night Freak Show Hall of Fame, thanks to MF Mad, who made the list and documented.
Wait, was it MF Mad or Mad Sack?
He's got a Twitter handle and a Facebook handle. So he is both people. He has a dual identity, much like the characters.
Wait,
in,
MF Mad is Mad Sack?
Yes.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know they were the same person.
So
I thought
thank you
MF
for-
Mad was somebody else and Mad Sack was somebody else. Oh, shit.
I
Well,
believe so,
thank you.
because he has determined that Ed Lauder has starred in Magic. He was also in The Rocketeer, and he was in True
He was
Romance.
the fucking FBI agent in The Rocketeer.
That's right.
And what was the last one?
True Romance. He was Captain Quiggle,
Sure.
but he was uncredited.
I remember him from
in that movie.
Rocketeer. That's what
He was
I
on an episode of The Office at one point too.
As what?
Sam Stone Sr. in 2013, so it was one of the later seasons.
Oh, okay.
So
I was going to say, after season 7, I'm out.
Yeah, in my mind, he's always a police officer, but it could
he's
be
a
because
good- he's a good
it's True
FBI
Romance,
dude, yeah, with
where
a
those
hat
two
and
guys
everything,
are trying to pitch the idea of going and busting this kid Clarence. It's fucking
Right.
good. I love this guy.
Right.
Okay, go. Whatever.
Right.
That's him.
He's in the fucking Bulldog in The Rocketeer. Okay.
He's got so
Yeah.
many credits. He's been in everything.
I like this guy.
Yeah. So Anne Margaret's married to him. Peggy Sue's married to him, but this is an
Peggy Sue.
unhappy. That's right, Peggy
Sue.
Ann Snow.
This is not Peggy Sue got married.
It's an unhappy marriage, and he happens to be off on a quote unquote business trip at this point.
Like
in
you
time.
do.
And because of that, a romance blossoms between big famous Corky from the city, the ventriloquist magician extraordinaire, who comes into her life and
So, Corky, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a ventriloquist, and
Don't even have to get that far because the first time he talks to her, he's every time she sees him, he's carrying it around. He doesn't even have to say what he does.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
I was kind of surprised. The relationship in this movie is he does a lot of yelling at her, which I'm like,
a
is that
lot.
yeah, because
attractive
the
in the
intensity,
1970s? I don't know. Yeah, he's very intense.
very intense. But you like it's the intense artist. It was attractive in the 70s, I guess.
Yeah, Jackson Pollock. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you. Just squirt some shit at a
Yeah.
at a thing, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. That's why, I mean, I know that they sleep together. This all culminates in a mind reading thing that is ultimately revealed to be a gag, but it wins her over. And they sleep together, and from that moment on, he's like, let's just take off and get out of here. We're going to go start a new life, and this will be a new chapter, and blah, 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 blah. And that's basically where the movie starts to put its screws to you, because all of these things are going to happen to make that absolutely impossible. Because, number one, there's always already somebody else in this relationship, and that's Fats.
Fats.
And eventually one day the husband does come home. Well, sorry, before that, Burgess Meredith shows up,
Right, yes.
tracks Corky down.
Does Burgess show up before Duke?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because Burgess shows up during Corky is having an argument with Fats.
Yes.
I think about leaving with Peggy, right?
I think so.
Because everybody does stuff with the doors open in the
Right, yeah.
at this cabin. Sorry,
Nobody makes sure they're alone. Yeah.
She owns a seaside resort, and he's in a cabin.
Yep.
Okay. And Burgess Meredith
I'm
shows
sorry.
up.
A seaside resort.
What do you call it? A lake. Sorry,
It is-
lakeside
it is
resort.
all
There's
right,
a body
we're
of
gonna
water.
go from seaside resort. It's a lakeside cabin.
Yeah.
Let's just
like
make sure we're there.
Cabins, plural.
Yeah, 2.
So did you guys notice how murky and dirty that fucking water was?
Again,
You couldn't
yeah,
see
this
shit in
is-
that water. Like that's what I'm like. This
It's
is
real, man. This is real
Yeah,
as
this
hell.
is the,
they
This is
picked
before
the
they color
ugliest.
correct it and turn it blue.
I know
Right.
they picked the ugliest time of year to film in this place, though. Man, I could not.
again, Jason lives in this water.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's why nobody else is there. That gives
Yeah.
them privacy for this kind of thing.
And nobody wants to be there when it's ugly.
How well did number one, if you're laying out this movie, the thing that has to work in order for you to be invested later is the love story has to work. Did it?
No.
We're talking about between Anthony Hopkins and Anne Margaret.
Yes. Were you in? Were you like, this is the sweetest thing? Like, this is just what this guy needs? I can see.
I mean, at first it was okay.
It's cute.
Well, up to this point, up to the point where Burgess Meredith shows up.
I think so. It works for me. It's cute between them because they're still like, hey, I had a crush on you years ago. You had a crush on me. Nobody ever said anything out loud. You know, and they're just kind of feeling each other out, and they're being all right. And she's kind of dorky because she's like, "Oh, I love fats."
Living in isolation is not good for her.
Right, that's the thing. It's just like she's lived by herself too long, and now we get this. So she's like anything that any person that comes, she's like, I love it. Yeah. So that's kind of her personality at this point. But I think it's kind of cute between them. They're just like reconnecting and everything. So I think up to this point, yeah, it works for me.
Yeah.
I like them. They're kind of cute together until, people start going psycho. But yeah, it's cute.
Well, I mean, his psychosis, I mean, I guess, you're kind of like, because I mean, the big test of it is this scene, which I thought was suspenseful. I mean, and it's basically, Burgess Meredith walks in on him having an argument with Fats. He says, no, this is just a bit for the act.
Yeah,
it wasn't
practicing.
real. And then Burgess Meredith challenges him to sit make Fats shut up for 5 minutes. If you can do that, we'll laugh this away.
Yeah,
but if you
this is a
can't,
good scene.
we got to go. I got to
like
get you to get a talk to a doctor,
Right.
and we'll get this fixed so you can continue on in your career.
Yeah. This is good. I like this.
Was it suspenseful? What was going through your head when this was happening?
I was just like, this has to, like, just by the nature of storytelling, this has to unravel eventually, right? So I thought it was going to then. Yeah, I thought that's when it was going to start, but it doesn't really until like the third act. Then it really starts to unravel. But
I like that they sit with it. Like only in movies from like this old, it's kind of a lost thing maybe at this point. Where just like they sit with that moment where they're just like, you need to have that dummy shut up for 5 minutes, and they're gonna sit there until something happens.
Cigars.
Right, they're gonna sit
not
there,
say much,
right, and the dummy's not gonna say anything, but they're not gonna say much, and they're just gonna wait it out
because you're just sitting there going like, man, he can't make it. And you're just watching,
because you're just like,
you're getting more tense because like at any
and he's
moment,
all sweaty.
Right,
he was sweaty
because Burgess Meredith is like, yeah, all right, because Burgess Meredith is in for it. He's just like, yeah, whatever, man. Just like, see if you can do it. It's like, it's been a minute.
Yeah,
it's been a minute 15. It's been a minute 25.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like there's a good camera shot in this where it swivels around because it's Anthony Hopkins is he's sitting on the couch and he's kind of squirming a little bit. And so the camera is just kind of moving to the side and twirling around. And then Fats his profile overtakes Anthony Hopkins' profile. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good...
He's sitting next to him on the couch.
Right.
The camera goes
next to him on the couch. And that's a good camera shot to kind of show what's going on at this point. Like that Fats is...
He's
overtaking
over.
it. Yeah, he's overtaking that.
Yeah.
So I like that. They pulled that off very well.
Yeah. And then
he doesn't make it.
No, he has to. He was. Yeah, I mean, he explodes in a kind of.
Yep.
And of course, the idea that Burgess Meredith is going to go back and tell somebody about this private condition that he has.
Yeah.
Fats says basically, you gotta stop him. And so he goes out and clubs him to death with the dummy, which I thought was important because that way Fats killed him.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And
Fats is injured.
Gets his skull cracked.
Which is what I was like when they were going with it. They were showing what happened to Burgess Meredith, and they were still like panning up and everything. Like this is what I'm hoping they show that Fats is injured as well. Like he comes off worse from this thing.
Did you hear him moaning?
Yeah, right.
Because the moan you think is Burgess Meredith.
Right. That's the thing. You hear him moaning as we move up, and then you're like, oh, I'm hoping it's going to Fats at this point. And like they did. All right, good. Yeah. That's what I wanted.
His head's all caved in.
Right.
Oh, that was for some reason. Like I know a guy talking to himself is crazy, but because it's a ventriloquist dummy, it's accepted, right? Mm-hmm. The murder is like okay, that's also crazy and, immoral and all this other stuff. But I get it, like, why you would do it because, it's like, you can't tell. So I'm going to kill you. But for some reason, the moment that I'm like, this fucking guy is off his rocker was when we see Fats again and he's bandaged him up like a medical bandage on his head.
As if it couldn't
Fixed the dummy.
As if the dummy couldn't get more disturbing. Like, well, it's naked too. And like by naked, like it's like got those weird like padded arms and like chest where it looks like a white pillow almost. To me, I was really distracted by that. I was like, oh my God. And like he has no wig on either.
No, and he's fucking bandaged up. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're bandaging up your injured dummy.
Yeah. That broke because you beat someone
Because
to
you
death
beat
with
someone
it.
to
Yeah.
death. Almost, almost
almost.
to death.
Yeah.
He thinks
As
to
we
death
find
at this
out,
point
yes.
in time. Yeah.
Well, I suppose that's the thing too. I mean, like at this point in the movie, he hasn't. I mean, that's the moment where after he kills Burgess Meredith, it's like, okay, there's no really going back from this. I mean, like he can't salvage his career because
because he doesn't have Burgess Meredith to promote him at this point.
Yeah.
It's like it's done.
It's like it's kind of like this is the end game. I mean, you're
We can go
toast.
anywhere now.
Yeah. And then he continues to make things worse instead of playing it off like, I don't know, where Burgess Meredith went.
Right.
He, because Anne Margaret's husband comes home and finds the car, the Rolls Royce out in the, like Corky completely forgot about the Rolls Royce. Like, how did Green get there? Didn't even think about it. And so now it's like, we got to deal with this. Well, instead of, going like, I don't know, is he here? Did he wander off and get lost or whatever? He fakes a phone call with him.
Right.
Which I'm like, anybody's going to be able to prove that this isn't and this is making it worse for you later when they find him dead.
Like, yeah, maybe he got here, but I never saw him. And then he wandered off and got, fell into the water and something else happened.
Right. Yeah.
Like, he could play this off to where you had no interaction with this man.
Yeah.
Does not do that.
Yeah. No.
Nope.
And like, how often in life do you see a Rolls Royce, let alone in like as a random ass place like that? Like, there's no getting out of that. There's no getting out of that.
Well, that's where Ed Lauder actually has I mean, they play him off in the movie like he's, I guess because only we hear about the marriage from Peggy, and we want her and Corky to get together. So he's like this awful, ogre, right? So he comes into the picture, and of course he's immediately suspicious that, she's been screwing around behind his back and all this. And so you're like, okay, this is, going toward that stereotype. And then he takes Corky out on in a boat on the lake. We got to have a conversation. And he's actually like, I think I'm going to lose her and all this. And I'm like, okay, so there's actually a guy here. And then he becomes like putting the pieces together of like what's actually happening. Like he's the one who's able to see well, there's this guy in the car and like, where did he go? And, he's asking all these questions that you can't ignore,
right.
Which is making it, I guess driving towards his fate at that point. Right.
Right. Yeah. He's driving himself to his own demise at that point.
Yeah.
First of all, never get in a boat with someone. Well, maybe ever. Just don't get in a boat with people. Yeah, maybe that's the thing.
Well, like,
it's like anyone who says it's just like, hey, we need to talk. After that, never get in a boat with someone. Never a good idea.
Don't follow the person that says we need to talk anywhere.
Never get in a boat with them. Yeah. Never go to an isolated location with them. Yeah. Just don't do it.
That's what I'm saying. It is worse if you have slept with their wife. Though.
Yeah.
It is worse.
You probably don't ever want.
That's right.
Let's go out to this secluded spot.
Right. You ever been to the cemetery?
Yeah.
let's go there.
Let's go.
Go there.
Let's go up to the roof.
Right.
Yeah.
Want to go play with guns?
Yeah. It's like,
let's do that.
Boat's got to be like top 3 worst places you could go with someone who hates you, though. Like,
shooting range, cemetery.
Yeah.
Boat.
Well, they rig another suspense scene there because Corky, of course, has buried Burgess Meredith's body out in the, dumped it in the
quote unquote, put some rocks in his pocket. He'll be fine.
Oh my God.
This is the dummies advice, I think, at this point. Yeah, put some rocks in his pocket. It'll be great.
And anyone who's ever listened to True Crime Anything was like, no, that won't work.
No, we weighted him down with 7 cinder blocks and they showed up a week later.
Yeah.
You're fucked. Mm-hmm. Not going to work.
But they make a suspense scene out of it because he ends up reeling in something. And is Corky going to have to brain him with the boat or?
And he's preparing. He's going to brain him.
I mean, honestly, at that point, if he would have, that kind of would have
It would've
solved a
been-
lot of his
Yeah.
problems.
Right, it would have
Yeah.
solved some shit.
And,
Becky, I don't know. We went out and he fell in the water. That's all you have to say, right?
Well,
There's a
the-
boating accident.
These people live in such a
It's always a
remote.
boating accident. Yeah.
These people live in such a remote location. Like, who is really going to notice if any of them go missing? You know what I'm saying? Like, because then the only one left at that point is Anne Margaret. So who cares?
Right.
He might as well just followed through and done it. Like,
Yeah, because he just
he
makes
could
it harder for himself again.
Right. He could get away with a lot out there at this point. Just probably do it.
they're basically like, they're like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. They're off-season caretakers of this property. No one's going to know what happens there.
Yeah, no one's keeping track.
Yeah.
It'd surprise you if I told you that Jack Nicholson was up for the role of Corky at one point.
Really, I would love to see that movie.
When
I
it
can't
was-
remember
wait,
if that
what
was
year is
the
this?
77,
So when was Shining?
80.
Ah, okay.
Because Jack Nicholson and Anne Margaret had been in Carnal Knowledge, I think, like the year or two before that.
Carnal
Steven
Knowledge.
Spielberg was supposed to direct this movie.
Yeah, I heard
and
that
he
as well.
wanted Robert De Niro, and I guess Laurence Olivier
watch
was
that.
the first
I would
choice
too,
for Burgess
like-
Meredith's part.
Yeah, Robert De Niro wouldn't have been bad. That'd been
Yeah,
good.
and Laurence Olivier, I'd totally watch. I watched the shit out of
that
that.
would-
But that would have been right after, like the year after Taxi Driver, I
Yeah.
guess, right? So that's
Yeah.
why you think Robert De Niro, but
Right, but then he did like fucking King of Comedy and shit.
yeah.
So that was his thing.
But it could have been the guy who made Jaws, the guy who's in Taxi Driver, up against Laurence Olivier in Magic. So anyway, Ed Lauder meets his end because the doll kills him because he's been asking around, sneaking around. He found Burgess Meredith's body, and the screws are being tightened again on
Right.
Corky.
They got me. They got me with him getting killed. Because I didn't know, I knew nothing about this movie, and I'm just like, I saw that dummy come up with a knife and start stabbing him. I'm like, holy shit, are we going in a different direction with this? Is this getting supernatural? Like, what's going on? And then it reveals Anthony Hopkins behind the curtain, sweating profusely. I'm
Yes.
like, he just killed a fucking dude.
Well, because that's the
but I'm like,
moment-
he got me. I'm just like, holy shit, what's going on?
Because the dummy, this is the first time in the movie that the dummy appears to move
Yes.
independently
Yeah.
of Anthony Hopkins, which I assume
They're
at some
very
point-
careful about that.
Oh yeah, it only happens once, I think.
Once.
Without Anthony
On the
Hopkins.
couch.
Yeah,
Yes.
There was
I
one
saw that
shot.
one shot.
I'm like his eyes are still moving.
Right.
but that was when they were in an intense conversation.
Right,
back
and so that
forth.
could be psychosis, and that
Yeah.
could be so many things, but it happens at that moment. But
Yeah,
that's the only
that's what I
time.
feel. If this movie was new and made today, I feel like no filmmaker today would have had that restraint.
No,
And all of them would have had the one time or more
Right.
when the doll was like, moving because that's the way he sees it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh,
They were very good with it.
It would have wandered into high tension levels of holes in logic, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it plays it pretty straight down the middle
It
because
does.
it's a movie that knows that, like, what's the scariest thing here is, like, what's actually happening on a character level between these people,
Yeah.
and the writing holds up. Because it's basically, like, there's not a lot of action in the movie. It's basically a conversational drama piece.
Yeah,
Except one of them is a stark raving lunatic, or it becomes more and more crazy.
right.
And
Yeah, I'm
With
kind
a
of
dummy.
surprised this isn't like one of those like sneaky Oscar movies. You know what I'm saying? Like every once in a while, the Academy will cut horror some slack and let it have a couple nominations. I'm kind of surprised this one didn't slide in as one of those.
Right, because it could have gone in as a terrifying love story.
Yeah, exactly.
The love would have got it the Oscar.
would you have given it something for Anthony Hopkins' performance?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at least a nomination of some sort, or at least
Or even like the screenplay, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, screenplay. But I mean, Anthony Hopkins comes off as
he's doing well.
but he's creepy. I mean, that's what I'm like. I
Yes.
don't know if he was the best guy for this. I mean, maybe because he gives it his all,
Yeah,
But it
sure.
might have been cooler to see someone who wasn't so like overtly creepy, you know,
Right,
that was a
because-
little more
and
level
this
headed
is-
and normal.
Right, but this is also us looking back on knowing Anthony Hopkins as we do now.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
looking
true.
back on a movie, watching.
Yeah,
Anthony
'cause he had
Hopkins.
been
'Cause
in
I know him
dramas
as
before that.
I know Anthony Hopkins as nothing but overtly creepy.
Yeah.
like that is Anthony Hopkins to me.
because that was
in everything I've ever
Well,
seen.
it
him
was
in.
Silence of the Lambs was the movie that made
Sure.
him a megastar, and that was in the 90s. Prior to that, I mean, he was in Elephant Man and a movie called Audrey Rose. So he was in some horror-ish things in addition to Magic around this time.
Sure.
And those are probably the things where I first became aware of him. But he'd done, dramatic things, the bounty and, stuff like that, prior to Silence of
He's
the
done
Lambs.
some Shakespeare stuff too, hasn't he?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I think he was in
almost guarantee it.
Hamlet.
Yeah,
Maybe?
that's what I was thinking. I thought it might have been Hamlet, but then
He
I
would
second
had
guessed
to have.
myself.
Oh, he wasn't
Yeah.
Hamlet, though.
No.
I don't
Not
think
Hamlet,
maybe it
but
wasn't Hamlet.
he's yeah, but it's Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Is he Sir Anthony Hopkins?
I feel like
He
he
is
was in
now.
He is
Macbeth,
Sir
maybe
Anthony
too,
Hopkins. I'm
like
sure
an,
he's done Shakespeare,
an older version of Macbeth, maybe.
I
Maybe.
don't think so, because that was the...
but he's done some shit.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, he's a guy with a lot of the Shakespearean training, the good old English
Right.
actor.
Yeah, where that was
the.
the first and maybe only training you got. Just like you learn Shakespeare, and then you go on to different roles from there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, eventually in this movie, Fats, and this is the thing, Fats becomes the dominant personality.
Right. There
to
is
the
a switch.
point where Anthony Hopkins cannot get, it's like, it's
He
just,
starts taking orders from Fats.
yeah, that's just creepy. And it's,
Oh, yeah.
Fats is telling people things that Anthony Hopkins, Corky wouldn't say, but he can't stop Fats from saying these things.
Yeah.
Or, then eventually Fats is like, I control you. It's like, and then there's this big
Reach your hand to the
sequence.
ceiling, like spin around like a dog.
Yeah, and he does it.
Yeah,
and you're
he does
sitting there watching this guy and you realize there's only one person in this room. But I mean, how, do you see them as distinct personalities? I mean, were you ever thinking of them as two people in a room?
It always felt like two people.
Yeah, that's what I
It
thought.
always felt like two people.
I totally thought it was going to be like a supernatural angle, especially like the stabbing scene. I was like, oh, that's where I like a
The stabbing
possessed
scene-
doll is
right,
what I
the
thought.
stabbing
Yeah.
scene was the I think they knew that too, was the big thing they were going for. Just like, this is the part where we're going to fuck with people. This is like, if there was ever a moment where people thought like we're going to cross a line and the dummy is going to be acting on his own, this is the moment.
Yeah.
So then they went for it big time, and they got me because I'm like, holy shit, are we doing this? Like, all right, tell me that we are. But then, like, again, sweaty Anthony Hopkins comes out and is like, and he's
What did you
been
do?
there
What did
doing
you
it.
do?
Yeah, right. So like they played it really well
Yeah.
for this movie.
Yeah.
Bravo to them.
And then it ends up like once you've got all the other characters out of the way and Anne Margaret just won't, get in the car and take off with him.
Yeah, just leave. God damn it.
She wants to, at least tell
She
her
owes
husband
Duke.
that, she's leaving him, which creates another conundrum. It's like, what's he going to do? How's he going to get out of this? And Fats orders him to go up to the house and kill her because he's already ordered him around the room, on all fours like a dog.
So
and
you
jumping
know
up.
that Fats has control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I like about that scene then where she, Anne Margaret's in her bedroom and it's Fats that comes to the door.
Right.
Basically, we don't get to see it, but I'm like, how
That's
else would you
Fats.
pull this off? But they just do it because she's having a one-sided conversation.
Right.
Against her door.
Best way to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's only Fats' voice. It's you never see Anthony Hopkins. It's like, that's a great way to express that. It's like Fats is in control. We're not going to see Anthony Hopkins because that would maybe like take away the illusion that Fats is taking control. So it's just that conversation on the other side of the door. It's like, it's really well done to get that point across.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Well, we do, I guess, see him when it cuts to outside when she finally does
Sure.
open the door.
To get the wooden heart.
Yeah. That he's whittled for her. He's a whittler.
He is a whittler. Ever since
He
he was
is
young.
standing outside with a switchblade, like hidden in the shadows. And I'm like, at that moment, because we'd already established at this point, just the way they do the costume changes in this movie, at this point, both Corky and Fats are wearing the exact same clothing,
Same thing.
which is creepy again. But as I was standing there looking at him, I'm like, is this Corky we're looking at, or is this Fats? It's like the Corky is the ego is gone, and like
I
Fats
think
is
that's totally Fats until
until
that bloody knife hits the floor.
And you think that he's killed her?
You think that he's gone? They had me. They had me for this. I'm like, he killed her. That was it. That was done. Until, there's that slight reveal. I'm just like, oh, well, he's holding himself. So this probably, yes, he got stabbed at some point.
Yeah.
But they had me.
Well, they play it
did
really well. It's like
They
you
really
see the
well.
bloody knife come. Or she opens the door. He's standing there, and then cut to
Bloody
inside
knife.
the cabin. The bloody knife comes down, and he's crying and saying, like, she really liked my heart. She was saying that as she opened the door, and you're like, oh my God, you sick bastard.
Killed her. Yep.
Yeah. But no,
Done.
Turns out he stabbed himself.
Very well.
Corky saved her from Fats.
Yes.
He's a hero.
Exactly.
A goddamn American hero.
And who does Corky
Did he,
die
though?
with?
Because, like, the ending of this movie, doesn't it imply things? Like, her voice, like, modulated at the very end there. Was that supposed to, like, imply that it's not over? I don't understand the end of this movie. The very last scene.
Well, at the end, he and Fats die.
Yeah.
Yes.
Blood loss or whatever in the cabin. Anne Margaret comes out to the cabin and all of a sudden is like, Corky, I changed my mind. I'm going to run off with you.
Right.
And then, she modulates her voice.
Yeah.
Like she's pretending. You know why? This is why she's doing it. It's because his whole emotional spiel to her on the other side of the door was in the voice of Fats. Right? So she's saying,
giving that back to him?
She's giving that back to him. She's like, is that how we're doing this? Then I can do a voice too. All
right.
Right. This is, it's not a trilogy of terror situation where she's become possessed with the spirit of Fats. It's just her like giving it back.
Well, but then she throws the heart up in the air and then cut to credits. That's it. That's why I was like, what? This is a really weirdly abrupt ending for this movie that took a long time to get to other things.
I think it's just letting you imagine her finding the what will end up being the remnants of this movie. Dead people and puppets.
Yeah, because she doesn't know that her husband's dead.
Her husband's
Burgess
dead.
Meredith is dead.
Burgess Meredith, he's dead.
And
Everyone's dead.
Did it all. Yeah.
I feel like it shouldn't be a surprise to her at this point.
But she doesn't have.
But she's
her character. I mean, you think about what she knows. Like,
Both men have been needlessly violent towards her. The fact that any of them are dead should not be a surprise to her.
And he talks through a doll.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Not like I know she'll be surprised. I'm saying she shouldn't be. But she's, as we said, she's mentally not well. So that was another thing with the end with her voice modulating like that. When her voice modulated, I was like, oh, she fully mentally broke. Like she's completely gone now because she's been mentally unstable this whole movie.
Yeah, if there was a sequel, it would be about her.
It felt like a sequel setup to me.
It would be about her being mentally incapable and finding the doll.
That's how she copes with this tragedy.
Putting her own personality into that doll and dealing with it at that point.
It'd be her in like some group therapy, you know.
She's sitting there with the doll.
Yeah, none of these people are okay.
No.
At all.
Yeah.
But there it is.
There it is. I guess that's magic.
It felt like a weird tag on the end of the movie for a movie that like didn't seem to work in those kinds of tropes, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
it felt like the credits were going to roll when they pull out of their
Out the window and everything. Just like that was where it was going to be.
Yeah.
It
like,
almost felt like a studio note or something, you know?
Yeah.
Didn't feel natural with the rest of the movie.
I'd be curious to know if it's in the book. The book, apparently. So it is based on William Goldman's novel.
Right.
I read a little bit of it, and I know that this is part of the appeal of it. But so the book is about this guy named Fats, and he has his friend named Corky.
Really?
And all the chapters are like, this is from the Journal of Fats, so-and-so, and it's evidence. Exhibit D or whatever.
Oh,
and so you're
cool.
reading the adventures of Fats, and Corky's not himself today, and he actually like swore at me or he hit me or he yelled at me. Corky, this guy, he never does it, you know. And then you find out that Fats is the dummy. So
that's great.
The book has a whole nother whammy to it.
Oh, that's great.
And it's like, how do you adapt that into a movie? But, you know, again, so the movie and the book are two completely different ways of going at the same story.
That's a great conceit for the book. I like that idea. It's a good framing device.
I know. I kind of want to read it now.
Yeah, bravo to us.
But Amazon, you can go and like read the first couple pages or whatever. So, yeah.
Wow.
Well, okay. So stick around, listener. What we're going to do, we go around the table and we're going to talk a little bit more about magic and tell you individually what we thought of it, what if we liked it or not, if we would recommend it to you. But first of all, we're going to answer some of your mail. And to do that, we're going to need the assistance of our mailman, Igor. Bring us the mail.
Masters, the mail. I've got the mail. So many letters. Our followers are rising.
Why, thank you, Igor.
Igor's got a little
Thanks,
Igor.
Does he have a
ventriloquist
tiny
dummy,
Igor?
A little tiny Igor.
Is it called Igor, or would he call it something else?
You'll have to ask him. I don't really want to look at him right now.
Would it be?
If you want to handle that, Sean, go ahead.
Igor and Igor? Would it be Igor?
There you go.
One? Yeah.
Igor with a Y.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, we want to remind you, you can write in, join the Freak Show family on Facebook,
Facebook.com/Saturday Night Freak Show.
on Twitter,
At Sat Freak Show.
by email,
Saturday Night Freak Show at yahoo.com.
or on Instagram at Saturday Night Freak Show. Lisa Paget writes in about magic and says this movie is the reason why ventriloquist dummies freak me the fuck out.
I feel like this probably scarred a whole generation, right? Had to have.
An earlier generation. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was telling you before that I was too young to remember it, but apparently the story is that the trailer for the TV spot for this movie like terrified a generation of kids because they'd apparently run it during prime time or kid programming.
Yeah.
And so
back before they're just like, no, you have to run this after 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah, they
They're
didn't
just
have
like,
those
run
rules
wild,
then.
run
Yeah.
it whenever.
yeah. Todd Lamp says,
Oh, that's a new name. Hi, Todd.
Hey, welcome aboard.
he says, magic is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Schlock Snob writes in.
I
love
remember
it.
Schlock
I love
Snob.
He says, it might be a little slow in parts, but I felt it was worth it overall. I always loved getting to see Burgess Meredith on the screen, and the one thing that surprised me the most about it was that it was written by William Goldman.
Mm-hmm.
Blaine Peltier writes in
Oh, hello.
Feels new, yeah.
and
Hello.
says,
It's a cool name.
do you all think they built the puppet to match the actor, or did they cast an actor that matched the puppet?
I know for sure they built the puppet to match the act.
Right, but what came first, I think is what he's asking, because, like, you
I think
remember...
Anthony Hopkins came first.
Okay, but you know that Michael Keaton movie, Jack Frost?
I do indeed.
Do you know the story about the snowman puppet?
I recently listened to the How Did This Get Made
Yeah.
of that. So, hello, George Clooney.
Yeah.
For the,
It was supposed to be George
Right.
Clooney, and they made Henson Company made a bunch of the puppets to look like George Clooney. And then he bailed, and so they said, "Well, fuck it, we spent too much. You're keeping these." And so the puppet looks nothing like Michael Keaton because
Wow.
yes,
I don't. I haven't watched it in a while. I don't remember it looking like George.
it doesn't really.
No, it doesn't look like anybody, but it definitely doesn't look like Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
So
It doesn't look like
have
it. I think they tried to do like the Clooney chin a little bit on it, but that's like the extent of
right,
it.
maybe the eyes, but no, this was
yeah.
definitely they cast Anthony Hopkins and then made a puppet.
Yeah,
that looked like
because it
Anthony
looks
Hopkins.
just like him.
Looks just like him with the, like I said, lilted eyes,
I'm just wondering how far in the process he was committed before they started building. You know,
Right, yeah.
big head.
Well, they knocked
Right
they had I'm sure that the window from photography to release on these movies, because post production back in 1977
Right.
wasn't something that took another year.
Yeah,
So it's probably shot and came out a couple months later. So I'm sure you could sculpt the dummy in
yeah.
record amount of time. About our episode Super Mario Brothers.
Aha.
Christian Steele writes in and says, this movie is the biggest embarrassment of Bob Hoskins' career, and it has some of the worst hairstyles ever.
yeah, pretty much.
It's not great.
Well, Jason Hall writes in, and he says, it's a guilty pleasure for me. It's by no means good, but I found some enjoyment in it all these years later.
It's nostalgia.
How did we
That's
come
for
out
everyone.
on this? I forgot. Like,
They
did we
all-
all?
well, no, I
did
recommended
we all
it if
pass?
you were 8.
Sure, and I think I recommended it. I'm like, I'll show my kid, but I will not watch the movie.
Yeah, but normal people
Right.
walk
Okay.
away.
Yeah, walk away.
Finding Cullen Milligan says the movie is akin to riding past a bad car wreck. You know it's going to be terrible, but you look anyway. I've seen this movie about 24 times, and no matter how awful it is, I can't stop watching it once it's on.
There's got to be a thing about this movie that clicks with some people that I'm not getting, because that's like the third person that's told us they cannot stop watching it.
Cannot
and
stop watching.
yeah, what is it like? What is it about this movie? A lot of people are like, I don't like it, but I've seen it 20 times. It's like, well, why do you keep watching it?
It's one of those where there's been many a time where I'm just like, I'm gonna go out and meet friends today, and then I'm just leaving the house. And I'm like, oh, Mario Brothers is on, and I'll sit down and be like,
There it
I'm gonna
is.
watch this for a
I
little bit.
cannot relate to that at all. It's literally never happened
I
to
don't
me.
agree with it, but I'm just saying, like, it draws you in somehow. I can't
I
explain
can't
it.
believe it.
No,
I can't
I
believe it.
can't believe it either.
About our previous episode on the movie Detention, Grant Parrish writes in
What's up?
and says, you want to talk weird movies starring Ron Jeremy? Let's try One-Eyed Monster. Aliens possesses penis.
That's a dick movie, right?
Which is has detached itself and it goes around you know what. I don't want to give too much away. It's part survival horror, part alien invasion, all ridiculous.
Sounds kind of awesome, actually. Yeah, I might check it out.
Isn't that ridiculous? It feels like it is, yeah. Ridiculous.
I tried to read it in that kind of inflection. Hopefully I was able to.
Bravo.
I'm curious.
Thank you.
I'll look into it. I'll report back.
I expect
Michaela's going to follow
I'm giving myself homework.
For our best of 2018 episode.
Oh, yay.
Big Poppy and the Tale of the Stinky Digit writes in.
I love that.
Tale of the Stinky Digit.
And says, listening to your best and worst 2018 episode and laughing at how hard Michaela is hating on Hereditary.
Hates
Hates through
Hereditary.
like a seething hatred, like she was close to tears or violence. Very emotional.
I was like 12 hours off of having watched it when we record that.
Not
I
a
stayed
fan.
up late and paid an obscene amount of money to watch that movie at home by myself. And so I was,
worth it.
I was cramming late for that
not a fan.
final. So
Who's not a fan?
About our past episode, Dracula AD 1972, Tony Genoway writes in and says, it's hard for people who didn't grow up with Hammer horror to get why those of us who did love it and forgive its many issues. I own 100 Hammer films and all the horror ones
Shit.
from the earliest, barely watchable noir efforts up to the latest stuff. Okay, so here's what he was saying about the movie, because we were talking on that episode. I think we erroneously said that Peter Cushing was not in a Doctor Who. Tony says Peter Cushing wasn't in the TV series, but he played the Doctor in 2 films by Amicus, Doctor Who and the Daleks in 1965 and the Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD in 1966.
they do have a lot of those movies. So it's
These
hard.
are not recognized as canon at all?
Apparently not. I don't know. I'm
Keeping
not sure
track
how
of
that
Doctor
works.
Who, anything is
Yeah, I was
really
gonna say,
difficult.
after all these years, yeah, I can't imagine.
So he was the Doctor, Peter
Okay.
Cushing.
There
Is
you
there
go.
nothing the man can't do?
Yeah, he has done it all, Colin.
done
I'll
it all.
give you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From Sherlock Holmes to Grand Moff Tarkin to Van Helsing.
He's
to
on the wall,
Doctor
right?
Who.
He's got to be.
He is on the wall. Christopher Lee is not.
What? We're going to have to fix
not?
that.
We need one more Christopher Lee
Okay.
movie
All
to put him on the
we'll
wall.
find
All
one.
right.
We'll find something.
So that brings us to the most exciting part of the podcast when we throw magic to the wolves. We're going to go around the table and
Now,
tell you what
when
we
you
thought of
said
it.
that, I wasn't thinking of the movie. I was thinking of just magic.
Throwing
Yeah,
magic.
I had a
You
very
just
weird
throw-
visual
like,
image.
That was a
Yeah.
phrase like we're throwing magic to the wolves. I'm just like, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
We're just throwing magic to the wolves right now.
Well, I mean, they have to live on something. We
that's
give
great.
them magic.
There it is.
All right. So we're going to start with
Michaela.
Why are we starting with me again? God,
2
y'all
weeks
keep
in a
trying to
row.
put it
Oh,
on
that
me. I
thing
man
know.
has lost his mind.
I know.
There's
tired
not
of
even
starting
one
with you,
person
Colin.
less here
I
tonight.
know.
Tired of starting.
It always starts in the same spot.
I know.
I know,
All right,
it has-
Colin.
We're going to take this
Colin,
power away from you, Sean.
know.
You can't handle it, apparently.
You can have it.
Okay.
That's
I will
fine.
take it.
I'm tired of having responsibility on this podcast.
See, I actually tried to trick him by actually. I think I gave him
You
the
did.
sub.
It was
I-
the body,
yeah.
right? It was the body movement
I was
of
like,
you. You were
yeah.
just like,
But
you
he
looked-
should know
there was
better.
emotion.
How many hundreds
No,
of
I'm
episodes have you been doing
I'm
this?
very influential. Like you can influence me like no matter what.
I purposely didn't make eye contact with you so you wouldn't look at
right?
me.
You all need to look down.
All right, so
Colin,
Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah.
What did you? We always go to you, Colin. What did you think of magic? See, I go to him and then he's just like,
well, now it's my. I have to collect myself a moment for it.
oh, you couldn't do this while I was fucking up. Come on.
This one's really easy. This is a complete recommendation. This is, I mean, it's a really smart thriller. It's a suspense, you know, it has the moments of suspense, I think, work. The character dynamics between the main characters, and there's so few of them, it could almost probably be a play. It's one of those kind of movies
I'd
where
go
you
watch
could do
that.
like the stage version of Magic. I mean, it feels like anything I'm going to say is pretty much, maybe I've been tipping my hat the whole way
I
through
don't
this.
know.
I've been
It doesn't have to
telling-
be long. You could just be like, get in and out and be like, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to warn you against. Is the pace long? By today's standards, maybe, but you know, I think if you like good dialogue, good characters, you know, this is one of those. Yeah, it might be too it might be too good for the freak show. This is like a legitimately good movie. I'm actually surprised that Sean has never heard of it.
Never heard
a
of
lot
it.
of movies, you surprise me when you haven't seen them, but
Right.
to not even have heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Which, that kind of scares me that, is this movie falling away to, especially because it's got Anthony Hopkins in it. I would have figured that people would know that, like, yeah, he did, these are his horror roles or
No,
whatever.
I think it's definitely falling away.
Yeah. So then you got to go spread the word of magic. Check it out. Show it to everybody that you know and love and make them watch it with you. It's a great movie. Michaela, what'd you think?
I would love to see a stage play version of this.
I would too.
I think
starring Anthony Hopkins.
Well, I actually think that this is the kind of story that it's almost like a Raisin in the Sun kind of thing where you could plug in different people constantly into this and it would be a really great acting showcase for them. And I would love to see different people in this same setup over and over again.
That would be good.
Like I said, I don't know if I'd say I'd want a remake of it, but I would like to see more versions of it.
Just the same script
just
with
the
different
same
people
script
in
with
it?
different people. Yeah, because like I really do think like, why don't people pull monologues from this movie and do that for auditions? Like there's a lot of good material here, and like every once in a while when we watch something on this show that has some like a William Goldman type attached, it's usually like a weird point in their career, and like it's like Intruder. We're like, how did this ever happen? It slipped through the cracks. But like everything about this is competent. It's not just a good screenplay and everything else is kind of B-level. It's all, like I said, I'm really surprised it didn't slide into the Oscars a little bit, even if it was just for a screenplay or for something like that.
No,
I mean, I didn't find anything about it, but I would definitely recommend it. For me, it was a little slow in some parts, but that was all part of the greater story it was telling. I think it was kind of necessary to be slow in some parts.
You can't be all dummy all the time.
Right. But yeah, I think dummies are one of those things that this movie is timeless in its creepiness and in its thriller nature. Like nothing about that ages poorly. Dummies will always be creepy, and we keep perpetuating this idea that they are nothing but creepy. So
because they don't change much.
No,
like as we're seeing this, we're just like from this to anything that's been recent. Like a dummy is a dummy.
Right.
They still bring this stuff up in like Goosebumps movies. So it doesn't change all that much.
Right.
And now every time you think of a creepy dummy, it's like, do those guys remember? Are they going back to magic? Is that where the dummy in Goosebumps comes from? Or
do they remember that?
Well, even if you think about like, even the one time there was like a dummy on Seinfeld, it was played like a horror movie. That episode I will never be able to forget because it terrified me.
This the movie that like made that happen?
By the way,
thanks.
Sorry, was Magic the movie that like forever from now on dummies are going to be?
It might have been because it sounded
creepy alter ego.
You would really have to ask everybody who ever put a dummy in something if this is something, because
now it's just a pop culture thing,
right? But I've never heard anybody reference this in pop culture as like, oh well, we did this.
It's been copied so much that we forgot where it started. Maybe
like Magic and all this. I've never heard it mentioned in reference to anything that's been made recently.
It might be it's been copied and copies have copied so much that like it forgot where it started. But I wouldn't be surprised because like it seemed like this was a big thing at the time. This movie was a big deal when it came out.
It doesn't seem like they were making a lot of dummy movies at this time, so it feels like it would be a big thing.
Yeah, but it's not like the cheap horror movie. This is like a prestige
movie. Yeah,
Richard Attenborough
with everybody who's attached to it. Yeah,
right. Yeah, it's interesting too because it almost seems like not so much in horror settings. Well, yeah, horror settings too, but it almost seems like when it's a lazy thing for writers to do now to bring a ventriloquist dummy into something. Like if you want, like I said, if you want shorthand for this person's creepy and a loner and not right, no quicker way to do that than to give them a ventriloquist dummy. Like no well-balanced person in a movie has a ventriloquist dummy. Never. It just never happens.
Right,
yeah. Listener, if you know of one, please let us know. But definitely recommend Sean.
Oh, wait, before that, I got it. It was not... Anthony Hopkins received both the Golden Globe and the BAFTA nomination, not the award. Nominations.
You got a BAFTA nomination for this?
That's great.
Wow, that's great. That's like at this point, that's a career highlight for
probably
a British actor at this point to get a BAFTA nomination.
I think he had done other stuff.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty good. Like Colin said, I think this is a very easy recommendation like you said, it's too good for the freak show. Like, it's a legitimately good movie. It's made by good people. It's written by good people. It's acted by very good people. It's off-putting to me because I don't like dummies. So that automatically puts it in, the category of plus to that. But I think everyone's doing a really good job in this movie. I like watching Anthony Hopkins act as both, as Fats and
Corky?
As Corky in this movie. I'm really enjoying that. It does feel like as much as I want it to be on set, him throwing his voice to Fats in the scenes, it is recorded
because he's doing it really fast.
He's doing it really
switching
fast,
between
and
dramatic and
right. And I'm watching Corky the entire time, going can I see him saying this stuff? And just there's certain stuff. Obviously, they recorded it later and put it on, but it's a legitimately good movie. It's a lot of good things. Well acted by everybody. I recommend Magic. Surprisingly, it's the only dummy movie I'll probably ever recommend. Because fuck all the other ones. Because they are probably far less interesting than this one. Wow. But I really like what they do in this one. So I definitely recommend Magic.
Sometime.
Yeah, it was really good, and I really enjoyed it. So that's a thumbs up from me.
Awesome. Well, then that's freak
it's
show.
Too easy,
freak show
viewers. So maybe give us some a little
after
harder
the past two movies, I'll take it. Take it.
Too. You did give us some hard ones the first two times. Yeah. This one was a little easier.
Well, we might be in for, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but so the final viewer choice movie, the one that got the most votes, is maybe another one that's
going to be a little easy.
It might be, yeah. I mean, because it's generally reviewed as a good movie. We're going to find out and tell you, but it's a movie called Train to Busan.
All right.
Zombies.
Good. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's
Korean.
really
it's a
good.
Korean zombie movie, I think. All right.
That sounds right.
You think.
I don't think it's Japanese, right? Where's Busan? Yeah. Okay, so you guys haven't seen it?
Nope.
I have not seen it.
I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Everybody was over the moon, best zombie movie of all time, or at least of a modern vintage.
So we'll have
a
lot to talk about.
Yeah. All right, so Train to Busan is next. You picked it. We're going to watch it. And until then, ladies and germs, the basement is going dark.